savings, and finally, transfers of assets such as livestock. Another type of intervention is increased access to decent and paid work. And this often has to do with job training programs. And finally, it's increasing entrepreneurship. So this is often done through microfinance or credit schemes or seed grants. Also, business development skills or financial literacy programs. And finally, helping women's groups to do market analysis and development to increase the success of their economic ventures. The benefits of these programs are enormous, potentially both for women and their families, but also at the community level. Not only do they help to increase savings and income for women, increase their financial and business skills, improve their health and well-being, they also increase their confidence, self-esteem, and economic autonomy. Often they increase bargaining power within the household or the couple, and they can lead to shifts in gender attitudes and roles at the family level. But there are also community benefits. So, for example, women engaged in these programs often have greater visibility and status in the community. This allows them to have more influence in decision-making at the community level. They may be able to engage in community activities and engage with authorities and leaders. It increases their social networks and also can lead to shifts in gender norms and practices. So, looking specifically at the issue of violence against women and girls, what impacts have we seen? Well, the answer is that the findings have been varied, and it depends on specific programs whether they actually increase or decrease violence against women. So in many cases, we see WEE programs actually leading to reduced levels of violence, particularly intimate partner violence. But there are cases that we have seen, particularly in microfinance programs, where violence has been increased, at least over the short term. So that's something that we really want to understand. And there are a few different areas that we think have explained the inconsistencies in these. So, for example, context is one of them. We found in countries or in communities where gender norms are very conservative and where women are not normally expected to be earning money or working outside of the home, then programs such as microfinance may actually be violating existing gender norms and therefore can lead to more stress and more violence in the household. Another issue is the nature of the opportunity. So, for example, short-term cash transfers may reduce violence for a brief period of time while they last, but often they are just seasonal or temporary, and then the violence may very well increase, go back to the same levels or even more after the opportunity is over. Another issue is women's relative contribution. There are times in some communities where a woman, if she contributes more to the family than her husband, this again violates existing gender norms that men should be the primary breadwinner, and that can increase the risk of IPV. And finally, the husband's response directly. Does he see the women's economic empowerment programs as a mutual benefit, or does he see it as a threat to his authority and to traditional gender roles? So there have been three main approaches to trying to prevent IPV through women's economic empowerment, or at least looking at the evidence around this. These are the three main approaches. One of them is specifically around economic strengthening. So it's the VSLAs, microfinance loans, or business development programs, but just alone without any other kind of intervention for women. The second one is on the right in red, and those are the social protection programs. And here we're talking about cash transfers, usually for the most vulnerable or marginalized women and families in communities. And these can be either conditional, in other words, a woman will have to make sure, keep her children in school, or there may need to have them vaccinated or some other kind of compliance in order to receive the cash transfers, or they can be non-conditional. And in the middle is a third approach, which combines economic strengthening, and we call it economic strengthening plus, because it includes gender transformative training. So something that really tries to change gender norms around women's roles and women's rights. So we have increasing evidence emerging for these three types of programs. And generally what we have seen that the economic strengthening alone is not effective in reducing IPV. And in some cases, it may even increase IPV for the reasons I mentioned earlier. The social protection programs, namely cash transfers, in general have been effective in reducing violence over the short term, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. And then the economic strengthening plus gender training have shown very promising results, and in several cases have been effective in reducing intimate partner violence. I'm going to mention two very well-known examples that you may already have heard of. One was the Image project, which was started in South Africa, and it has now been increased or spread out to Senegal and other countries. This was a microfinance program, and what they did was compare women who were just receiving microfinance to women who were receiving microfinance plus trainings. When women would come in to pay back their loans, they would also have sessions where they would look at HIV risk, at gender norms, and talk about domestic violence or intimate partner violence. And the results they had were very striking. They found that women's economic empowerment was reduced, that physical IPV was reduced by 55% in households where women received the intervention with gender. In addition to that, because of the economic program, households were less poor and they had improved HIV communication. The findings were even more startling among younger women. They had much higher uptake in HIV testing and less unprotected sex. And the impact on IPV was linked to the gender training rather than the microfinance. Another program that's similar to this is the Maisha project in Tanzania. In this one, they also had microcredit and gender training, and they had significant improvements in violence at 2 years past the intervention. So past year experience of IPV was reduced by 36%. Surprisingly and disappointingly, there was no impact on sexual violence, but there was reduced acceptance of IPV. So again, it also depends on what kind of violence we're talking about, and sexual violence seems to be even more intractable than physical violence. Now looking at cash transfer programs, there was a global study of 24 different studies. So this was a review of studies, and they found that in 3/4 of the studies, cash transfers to the household reduced the levels of intimate partner violence. And only in one of the studies did they have a suggestion of increased risk. And there was little evidence that the cash was used, for example, for alcohol, drugs, or gambling, or for other issues that were not part of the objectives of the program. There are three main pathways that they think that these cash transfers can lead to reduced IPV. One of them is at the level of the household impact. and that is economic security and emotional well-being. And what they found was that it really reduced the stress on the family in general. People were happier, there was less conflict, and less depression, and that was part of the reason that violence went down. Another mechanism is through intra-household conflict, particularly marital dynamic. And so qualitative research found that women said that their husbands were much less likely to fight with them, and they were less likely to fight over lack of resources, and therefore that helped keep the peace, and there was less IPV. And the third impact is specifically through women's empowerment. And this is women feeling more confident, feeling that because they had their own resources, they were less dependent on their husbands, and that this made them feel more confident also to have more decision-making power. And this also led to less violence. So wrapping up, what are the main takeaways from the evidence we have? First of all, we see that the relationship between women's economic empowerment and IPV is complex and nuanced. It doesn't just go in one direction. And a key factor in the variability is how the partner responds and whether or not there's backlash against the shift in women's roles that comes as a result of the programs. Now, as I said earlier, in places where women are working less or women's economic empowerment is considered less normal, there is more of a risk of exacerbating violence. Where it's more normalized, there seems to be less risk. So where it's more normal for women to work outside the home, for example, there's less risk of exacerbating violence. However, and this is very important, we find little support for the idea that economic strengthening alone, for example, microfinance all by itself, without gender or another kind of component that really strengthens women's knowledge and attitudes, there's little support for the idea that this can reduce violence in the short term. So just a few final considerations for programming. From this, we can see that women's economic empowerment groups can be incredibly important, and these are very important interventions. What we really need to do is invest time into understanding the situation in a country before we start the programs. We want to make very sure that the women's economic programs are going to have the effect that we want, and that they're not going to lead to more violence, that in addition to improving women's and families and communities' economic standing, that they're also contributing to reducing violence, and certainly not to increasing it. So what's really important before we start the programs is making sure that everybody understands what the program is about and how it can benefit the community. And of course, it's very important to train the facilitators very carefully. We've discovered that that makes a huge difference in the success of a program. And then we also need to work very carefully with programs and monitor them to make sure that we are not having any unintended consequences. And with that, I'm going to end this presentation. Thank you so much for your patience with me. I'm very sorry for the interruptions, and I wish you a very successful conference for the next 2 days. I'm very sorry not to be there with you, but my best wishes for success.
Sorry she has not been able to be with us today. Those of you who've come, we've been listening to a pre-recorded keynote from Professor Ellsberg as we wait for the team from the VC to join us, together with the cabinet, with the CS. So we can continue the discussion as we wait. I think the key issue is intimate partner violence and women economic empowerment. What way forward? So I'm ready to listen to comments from you, the audience. Some could be experiences of research where you're working on the intersections between the two. I think there'll be somebody who will be able to give us a microphone for anybody. So kindly feel free to just indicate with a show of hand, and the mic will come to you. Thank you very much. So, does women economic empowerment improve or make it worse for the women in the issues of intimate partner violence? I'm trying to look at some of you with deep eyes. Yes, at the back there, thank you very much. Dr. Pacifica Okemwa. I think I'll just request you to stand when you're giving your comment or question.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have a question, just an appreciation of this particular keynote address by Professor Mary. She has mentioned two things that kind of clicked in my mind. One, how do gender norms influence the programs that we are trying to implement? Now, this is curious because every time we go implementing programs, we kind of look at the superficial evidence of what the problems are. But the deep-seated beliefs, the deep-seated rules that are even unspoken are always untouched. Yet these are the same ones that would influence the success of our programs. So it's important to understand these gender and social norms first, so that that transformation of the same could inform the programs. The second thing I want to mention is just to re-emphasize her way forward, that gender training should really be part and parcel of our economic empowerment programs. So I think that what she's mentioned is very important. And so we should be asking ourselves, when we are programming, what aspects of gender training are these? I have observed over the years that when we say gender training, we literally are speaking about just awareness. It has to go beyond awareness. Awareness of what gender is, what sex is, that is okay, but it's not enough. We have to dig deep into other gender and power relations that may stick out and become a barrier to our economic empowerment programming. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. for those comments. Indeed, gender training, what should it entail? Is it only awareness? And what are we doing with regard to that? Is it mainstreamed in any of the programming that we are doing? You notice, for example, in the Maisha program that she gave us an example, there was no change in the sexual violence. How are all those variables measured? Is there a standard way? How do we bring in the gender transformative aspects in all this programming as well? So thank you very much. We move on to any other comments. It could also be a question, and sometimes questions may be asked and you find that somebody in the audience may be able to respond. Thank you very much, Professor Womern. I see your hand up.
Just wondering aloud that there's so many or so much talk and or interventions that are being put in place to manage the issue of intimate partner violence. But when you listen to media, read the papers, or even witness from neighborhoods, it seems that the violence has is elevated. So I don't know whether, what is it that we are not doing right? That's what I'm wondering. Because we should be seeing less of these impacts, but we are seeing more of them, and even more, I don't know how to call it, more violence, or I mean deeper violence. You know, it is leading to literally, the last case I had was in the news about somebody who just slaughtered the wife in somewhere in Wasingishu for selling a goat. And you are being asked, how did you use the money? And then you are just killed. So what is it that we are not doing right? Is it a question of just disempowerment on women now? Is there something we are missing in terms of creating awareness and or training on men themselves? So that when we are talking about gender training, it's actually training for both, can I call them sexes? Both gender, so that we are on the same page. You are not empowering one person and the other partner is feeling that this person is being given the power to threaten me, and therefore it creates what we call the backlash. I was just wondering, maybe some of us could give some insights whether it's just individual cases we are seeing, or the number of population has increased, and therefore we are seeing more cases, or indeed there are more cases that are there despite the many interventions and even the laws that are there.
Thank you very much. I think a question that can add on to that is it the fact that there is more awareness and reporting, especially through social media? Were these things happening but not coming to the fore in the same rapid way that they are coming at the moment, so that it may seem there are more cases when there could be less? I think I bring that question back to the floor, and I see Professor Wawire here at the front can also add on to that. Thank you very much, Prof. So, good morning, Prof.
Just to follow up with what Professor Nywera is saying, I think as researchers, we should not just research on women issues, because they are intertwined with male issues. And so when we are sampling and we are looking at women economic empowerment, let's put all the sexes, not gender, because gender is roles, sexes together, and look at a study that looks at women. At the same time is comparing, you are comparing those results and findings with men. What are men saying about these things? Because like the study we are doing, we discovered that it cannot be complete until we talk to men also. So it's not just about sampling and looking at women alone. We need to look at women and what are the perspectives, or what are the things men are also saying, so that we have some kind of joint researches and a joint kind of sampling, and not just saying we are looking at women economic empowerment alone.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, if I also just follow up, thank you. You may bring the mic to the front. Indeed, is it men being, is it violence by men to women or vice versa? And that's a question that continues to require further research as well. Karibu sana.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The presentation from Prof is quite encouraging, and it's also opening some eyes, especially in the area of microcredit. But what I want to stretch on is when we are looking at many issues, as professors have said, when we are looking at women issues, we also need to look at
men issues.
Men issues. We need to understand and acknowledge that in this country, the resources that were at disposal at the family level have diminished to a level that even what a family could opt to use, it's not there. So they require an extra thinking so that they can provide the basics at home. I want to say that I give an example. Like I started a program for women back 1998 in Meru. That program, I started in a small way that every woman was to contribute just minimum of 50 shillings per month. It built up to a level of reaching even 180 million by the time I was exiting the diocese. But slightly 5 years before I exited, I realized I'm creating more problems at the family level when women have resources to take care of the family basics. Then now they started giving back to the men. And then we were to sit down with the men and start crafting, thinking again, what is it that we can do? Because women were the ones buying cows for milk at home. Women were the ones taking back children to school. Then men, their role was just left that role. Then we asked ourselves, what can we do? Then we started men program in relation to that. But for the men, we set a standard of 100 shillings per month. And by the time I exited, men had already started seeing the sense of having a diverse way of thinking in looking at the resources to complement what women are doing. And a case that I wrote, that I shared, is there was a family that had difficulties in completing just a structure at home, where a residence house at home. So when we started this program, we gave the man 200,000. The woman came and got 800,000, and they completed the house. And that family was recorded as one of the peaceful family within that village. So I agree in the transformation agenda, in the training package, let's not be biased on one gender thinking that we are empowering the other gender. Let's be focused in handling matters of integration, for the family integration and for the gender integration, and we are sure we'll get it right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Kindly, you'll tell us your name, please.
My name is Abraham Maruta from Tharaka Nithi County. I'm in the research team of KU.
Thank you very much. That is one of our partners from Tharaka Nithi. Thank you for that. We also have a gentleman. Kindly, you will tell us your name as you start. But those were very useful points of the stakeholder engagement and integrating both gender or both sexes, as we've had. Karibu.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Innocent Shave from Uganda. I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. And I want to say that the topic of discussion is very pertinent to me because I've had an opportunity to specifically work on a program that targets women for economic empowerment. And when I listened in the presentation by Professor Mary, I could really see that those are the issues that we have been struggling with. Does women economic empowerment increase violence against women? Now, the gentleman who has just been speaking, he says that yes, unless we appreciate that the term gender does not necessarily mean women alone, then we shall have men to support us. Because most of the trainers, most of the people who conduct the trainings tend to make people misconceptualize the term gender to mean women. And as a church, you find that immediately men start opposing the idea or the ideas. But also too, men who are here in this room, we tend to be selfish, that we never want to lose the power that we have. That we shall try to do whatever it takes to challenge even what works for women. And so it's very important that as we talk about women economic empowerment, we think on how best we can involve men in these programs for them to appreciate that empowering a woman does not mean necessarily that the man is going to lose their power. But also the experience shows us that as a woman becomes more empowered, they tend also to change. They tend to change and they start challenging that authority that men think is theirs. So we need to integrate the approach of male involvement, especially in these programs. I think that's what I wanted to add for now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll just say your name again?
Innocent Tushave. I speak a bit faster. Yeah.
Okay. So Innocent, thank you so much. Those are very important points. I think we have 3 hands at the back. You can start with the gentleman. Let me see the other hand, please. Then behind there, and then there's a third hand here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Good morning, I'm loud.
Good morning.
I'm just picking up from what my colleagues have said. And also picking up from the considerations which were suggested by Professor in our presentation. Ensure men understand. I'm Dr. Peter Philip from Goa School of Business. I'm also a researcher. I'm in the Tarakanidhi team.
Oh, thank you. Welcome.
I can tell you in the field, there are instances where we were chased away from the households by the men, and my colleagues can confirm that. When it was about women, at some point it was like, we have seen so many come here, talk about women, and unfortunately the women are like getting so much empowered to a point that we are disappearing from the homestead. And therefore I want to pick and support what Professor suggested, that men should be meant to understand what is all this about women economic empowerment. And even going further, to pick from what Mheshimiwa and our colleague from Uganda said, let it be a family unit, because that is the only time we shall have a success. And by the time we are finishing our data collection, in fact, one of my colleagues who is not here, we met Professor Waudo and we asked her, can the hub think about not just we, and then we start asking ourselves, what about me? Me standing for men economic empowerment, instead of always talk about we, women economic empowerment. And I rest my case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think as we continue with the discussion, we need to consider when we say women are becoming so much empowered, how much is so much? So what's the level where they should reach? And we say for women, this is for you, and for men, that should be for you. I'm seeing Dr. Barasa, and then we shall come to Dr. Wanjama, and then to Dr. Mwoma. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to add to what the gentlemen have put forward. You know, when you go into the field and you want to intervene and empower the woman, and you go with the perspective that the man is the perpetrator, you know, it's likely that the program might actually not succeed. So basically what I would have loved to hear is how are you you know, not all men are violent. So if you go in that you're empowering to reduce violence, then perhaps that might bring a hitch to the program. So what if you go in and focus on looking at those positives that men have, you know, the positive masculinities that men possess, and you anchor your transformation programs on that. You know, you bring men on board, let those who are not violent be the drivers of the agenda so that they're influencing those who are, to reduce violence and empower. And the other thing maybe that would be important is, are those who are not violent, do wives of those who are not violent, are they empowered? So many dynamics around there that need to be looked at.
Thank you very much. You can come and give to Dr. Anjama here. Her hand has been up also. So what about if they become violent and they were not violent? What brings about violence? Why would it escalate? Or why would there be a backlash? So many things to think about. Welcome, Dr. Ari.
Thank you, and I want to thank the previous speakers on this issue. This issue is not today's issue. It has been there. And I remember with the HIV and AIDS, and the survivors of HIV and AIDS asking for programs to assist in getting them food on the table. Most of the programs are more or less tended to get to women. But after a while, it was realized it is not going anywhere. Because when you get food to women, they're sharing within the house. But also the feeling, and this is, I don't know whether it is the reality, but it's something that comes along. When you just give something to women, there is this backlash that now you're empowering women. In fact, if you ask many people what empowerment is, they even don't know. Yet they will say there has been so much empowerment for women, men have been left behind. We need to work on the realities and sensitize people on the realities. But I want to give an example of a project that was facilitated from Finland 1998. And this was giving women havers, women groups havers, to be able to enrich their families with milk and the extra coin to get some money for income. Initially, this project was targeted to women alone and women groups, because in many communities you don't have many groups. You have women groups. And therefore, as an entry to the community, they went with the groups that existed. But the first tranche of 100 havers was given to women. By the first 6 months, almost like half of the households were in chaos, because havers or cows do not belong to women. They belong to men. So if a cow comes to a household, the men, a few of them were sold the following day by the men because they did not think a woman needed to own. Therefore, what happened, and this is a reality in the community, what happened? We were called in and we were asked to sensitize men of the importance of this cow, that this cow does not come to the woman, comes to the family. And when the family receives a haver, is it to the women only or to the men? And therefore the community had to call men to a meeting. And they had a whole day discussion. The explanation was made that this actually was meant for assisting the household, not women. And therefore, it was discussed openly. Men, then how do you want us to handle this program? And men said, if you want to introduce this before you brought the havers, if you told us this were not for women alone, because my fear was if this cow gives, if we enrich ourselves, then the woman will say, I'm the source of this wealth. And the fear is founded because norms do not allow women to own resources according to the community. However, when it was explained, the rest of 5 years, the community had received many more, and the household had settled down. What am I saying? What Mary said, what the speaker said, and what most of us have said, sensitization is very, very important. Even if it is a day, just have a day and get everybody aligned to why this is. And also, let the women know this is not your property. Yes, we meant to help your family. And from this Haver project, it was learned that once you bring the men in, they also assist in feeding the cows. They also assist in taking them to the whatever. They become, would I say, support. And there is nothing as good in any family like when men and women work together for the good of the family. So all it needs is sensitization, but before, not within, not after. That is when it becomes more effective. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As you take the mic there, I think increasingly we are noting that the family unit. Oh yes, after Dr. Moma, it will come to the Ugandan team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to speak to what Professor Nywere brought on board about the social media, the many cases that we are reading about what is happening on this violence and the case. I think as much as a lot of cases are highlighted, this is a problem that has existed for many years, like Professor said here. But I'm thinking also through the social media, some men or some families also get solutions who have been suffering. They say, oh, I can kill if that is the case. That can also have a negative impact. But of concern is the issue of having women who are violent to their husbands. And we have seen on social media, we have seen on TV and everywhere, where women are violent. Can a research be done to find out whether these are the empowered women who are trying to stamp their feet and show how powerful they are by beating or being violent to their husbands? I believe we should be in a balanced community, and a balanced community is where everybody feels safe and supportive to everybody. Is there a way we can move towards that direction and ensure that as we bring up children, right from my area of specialization is in early childhood, and we believe that if there is anything that we want to inculcate in our society, we must start very early. Supporting the little children to appreciate each other. They see a society where both men and women are supportive to each other, and then they emulate, and then we will have a generation that is supportive to each other. I think it is high time that we focus our attention to see whether this other side of violence is because of empowerment that the women have gotten. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, all the women in this room, are you empowered? Do you feel empowered? And if you're empowered, are you violent towards the other? You know, so there are so many issues. When you say there's fear that if this woman becomes empowered, then I may need to hide from them. The man may need to hide from me because empowerment equals violence. I think we shouldn't think about it in that sense. Thank you very much. Kindly tell us your name.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Womern.
Mm-hmm.
I am the Executive Director, Institute for Social Transformation, and I come from Uganda, of course.
Welcome.
And Institute for Social Transformation is an NGO that works with
Mm-hmm.
women who work in the informal sector, basically in markets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for me, yeah, you are asking about if we're empowered. I'm an empowered lady, I would say that. Yeah, and I want to appreciate everybody who is bringing on, you know, this board of knowledge to all of us who are here today in regards to issues of economic empowerment, because that is my main area of focus when I work with the women in the informal sector. I just want to refer to Professor Mary's presentation. And I'm asking ourselves, are we judging ourselves so fast when it comes to economic empowerment? Because this seems to be new to the kind of, you know, our traditional ways of working with women. That are we judging ourselves so fast? Because we need to appreciate that there is a mindset change and a shift that has to happen progressively. But also to refer to our counterparts, the men, that it is not the usual. They have to take, you know, step by step to accept it, that it has to happen, and also appreciating the other good side of it. You know, most of the projects that we are dealing with, especially when it comes to women economic empowerment, we are basing on funds, grants that are coming through to support us in doing this. And when you look at some of these grants that are coming through, they're so, you know, you want to achieve so much, but within, you know, the budget is so little. It's so small. And then you want to evaluate so fast the impact. Are we being real? Because you're giving me, assumingly, 100,000 US dollars, and you want me to implement a project, and you want the results or the impact that would have created, let me say, in almost 10 years probably, but you want me to do and finish. But again, when it also comes to us, the implementers or the trainers, whatever we call ourselves, which kind of methodologies are we using? Because I've had so many people saying, you know, we are leaving out the men, blah, 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 but which methodologies are we using? I'll give a testimony of the gender action learning system, that methodology is very empowering for both men and women. If we bring them in the same space to vision for their families. Because if you don't have a vision, then you will not achieve what we are calling, you know, the economic empowerment for all. Because I will not understand it. Even if the woman comes and presents to the man, you know, we have to look at those social norms that also hinder women from communicating very well with their husbands. We are not used to that kind of system. But we need to build this too. So male engagement, like my colleague said, we should get it. I don't know whether Kenya already has the male engagement strategy but in Uganda we already have it. So I think this is where we are heading, but not us to act like we are rivals with our men. We love them, but we know we need to get them on board so that we can, yeah. So basically, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Getting the men on board is very important. And we are glad you have the men engagement strategy. I think we will be told appropriately whether we have one in Kenya as well. And an important point that's come out there is the fact that this is a process. It's not something where you're doing a 2-year project and then you're coming up with conclusions that are binding, but in 2 years perhaps it could just be some pointers. Thank you very much. You may also give your comment. Kindly tell us your name.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
My name is Pauline Mombi from Kenya Women and Children Wellness Center. I'm the program manager for the outreach program. We actually implement programs geared towards prevention of gender-based violence, and one of our projects is Women Economic Empowerment. But we also have, I don't know whether to call it me, like somebody mentioned. So we also have programs where we engage men and we empower men on issues related to gender-based violence. So what we've discovered over the last 11 years that we've been implementing our programming is that, yes, there are many factors that contribute to gender-based violence or intimate partner violence. It's not just financial challenges. So we have things like drug and substance abuse, we have issues with anger management, we have all those issues. So financial problem is one of them. So whenever we engage men, we realize that men are actually facing intimate partner violence in relation to things like emotional violence, psychosocial violence. You know, when you think of gender-based violence or intimate partner violence, it's not just physical. You know, it's not just the physical violence or the sexual violence. We have emotional and we also have psychological. So men, even from all walks of life, even from the highest status, actually experience emotional and physical violence. And these are things we cannot run away from. So whenever we think of economically, I mean empowering women economically, what about our men who are facing emotional, the men who are facing psychological violence? So in our programming, what we've decided to do, we've decided to engage men and actually tell them what to do, referral mechanism and all that, because they're equally affected. So let's not be blind to the fact that even the men from all walks of life, from Odaiga, from Karen, from, men who are earning, men from high-end societies are also experiencing these violences. So when you talk of empowering a woman, let's think of those women or those men who are living with women who are already empowered. So I think that's my point is let's engage men from all walks of life also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope the men in this room are not suffering violence or physical, psychological, and they're keeping quiet. I think we can reach out to Mumbi for assistance with regard to that. Thank you very much. Welcome, Miriam. You can tell us your full name, and we then ask, give your contribution as well.
Okay, my name is Teresia Njihia, and with the Mawazo Institute, and I really appreciate the discussions that we are having, and I also want to bring another, maybe to reinforce or bring another aspect of our discussions where we also need to think seriously about empowering women and who are in career and professional women, most of us who are in this room, because we know that only about 30% of women are scientists in Africa. And this is maybe because of many social aspects that we've discussed about, and also given that women are also the primary caregivers and many other challenges. And so as we endeavor to empower women in the villages, I think we also need to empower especially these young upcoming scientists and women in our institutions. And what my the institution that I work with is currently trying to do is that we have, we are bringing in women who are pursuing their PhDs in universities in East Africa, and we are giving them research funds. We are also trying to be flexible in the kind of support that we are giving them, such that if one needs to travel for a conference with a young baby, then we can sponsor that. Some gender-sensitive interventions. Also, we are trying, we know that in some of our university institutions, some of the degrees, PhD degrees that we have, they are purely research-based. And we also need to give young women scientists other soft skills that they need in order to become leaders. So we're also offering other training courses. And so I would urge all of us to also, in our capacities as professors, as directors, in our programs, let's endeavor to also empower upcoming young scholars. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. For those of you who came when we were already engaging, we started off with a pre-recorded keynote address by Professor Mary Ellsberg that was looking at women, economic empowerment, and intimate partner violence. So you will notice that that has been a slight change in the program, because this is the session that was to come after the health break. I wish to inform you that we shall be taking that health break or tea break at 10:30, so that when we come back from the tea break is when now we shall have the official opening of the conference. So we have like, I think 7 minutes. We have 10 minutes to add any additional comments, to build on others. Thank you very much that have been said from the floor. Kindly, you'll tell us your name as you continue.
Thank you. I'm Fanny Swangila from the University of Kabianga, in charge of gender. I was not in when the presentation was taking place, but I've been able to follow through a few of the comments that have been made, and probably mine is along those comments. Now, one of the things that we are trying to do down in Kericho, that's where the university is dealing with GBV. A lot of violence. And two things are very critical. One is where you're trying to empower the women, and they're not ready to be empowered. They are perpetrators of the same violence. That is one weakness that we are looking at, where you even carry out a survey to make decisions and really see how you can be able to help. But unfortunately, the same women are not ready to take on to the surveys. They're not ready to give information. When you come through to empower them, they are the same people who will not talk. They are the same people who will exacerbate the male counterparts to even continue with the same violence. So that's one of the things. And then I want to follow up on what one participant has mentioned on early childhood, I think. Early childhood. And I think what you are trying to come up with is very important, where you actually want to bring up these children who are already getting empowered and to understand their position in the society. My only challenge would be, yes, we want to empower these kids. We want to teach them their rights. We want to let them understand that they can coexist. But where do we send these children to? Back to the environments where the culture is not accepting this, where their parents are not accepting this, and then you bring this harmony again in the families, and then this violence still continues. So how do we deal with this? Yes, we want to bring up children in that sense, but how do we deal with the other social agents? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So how do we deal with that? I think that is the issue of knowing that this is a process. It's not a one-off event, but it is something that you start, like lighting a fire, which then becomes bigger, and so on. So it is a challenge to the team in this room, together with other researchers, to see how best I think one of the issues that has come out as we have discussed is how best to involve men and women and the family unit, and not thinking that it's women alone. Men must be part of the process from the beginning. The other thing that has come up is relating to change. I think, Innocent, you're the one who was saying that, the men are losing the power while the women are gaining. So how are we balancing those power relations? Definitely change will have to occur. Is this change positive for both gender? I think that is an issue that we need to continue discussing. And also, what methods are we using? Are these methods that are transferable between different groups, between countries? Are they transboundary? I think also understanding that it is not only economic. We are discussing women economic empowerment, but there are so many other issues that are also touching on that empowerment. And therefore, as we break for tea, I think we will be guided how long. I think usually it's 30 minutes. Usually tea break is 30 minutes. So we can take any last comments. I'm saying we have from my clock, we have 5 minutes. We may go at 10:25 and we are chased away. Yesterday I was reading something on social media of this police officer who goes to a farm and says to the farmer, I'm here to check whether you are growing any illegal substance. I won't use any name. And the farmer says, oh, no. Oh, you can go to the farm, but don't go to that area. And the policeman says, look at my ID. I am a police officer. I can do what I want to do. Don't you know that? And of course, the guy goes into the area that he has been forbidden to go. And a few minutes later, the guy is running out, screaming with a big swarm of bees chasing him. And the farmer tells him, hey, just show him your ID, Show the bees your ID and they will know you are this very important police officer. So I'm worried we may just go and it's not 10:30 and they say, no, it says 10:30. So Eunice, you can guide us whether we can go right now. I think the people need some stretching. Make sure you network. Make sure you talk with somebody who you did not know when you entered the room. So thank you very much. My name is Professor Joy Obando from here, KU. I've been your moderator. Thank you very much. I've also learned a lot. I think we can clap for each other as we go for tea. Okay, so we are going for a very quick tea, 15 minutes, please. Then we come back for the opening session. Thank you very much. Continue enjoying yourselves. Yeah. Yes? Oh, the tea, when you walk out, you'll see 2 tables on the corridor. Is there any usher nearby?
Driving and riding without incidences on the road is such an amazing experience. But do you know while many road traffic crashes are avoidable, human behavior continues to be the leading cause. Speeding, lane indiscipline, drunk driving, distracted driving, failure to wear a helmet, and failure to use available pedestrian ways have been flagged by NTSA as the fatal 6 behaviors likely to lead to a fatal crash and serious injuries. As part of the Usalama Barabarani campaign, we request all road users to prevent these fatal 6 behaviors for their own safety and that of others. When driving, ensure your speed is within the stipulated limits. The road ahead is clear before overtaking. Stick to your lane. Keep left unless carefully overtaking. You're well rested if driving on long distances, and you never drink and drive. Usalama Barabarani starts with you. Fika Salama. This message is brought to you by the National Transport and Safety Authority and the European Union.
Access to knowledge, solution to unanswered questions.
accessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more, only on Law Matters.
Tunapatana na vitu chafu, unaweza pata watoto wametupwa huku ndani, machupa zinatukatakata na uchafu mingi, lakini hatujali mambo ya uchafu. Tunajali tu mahali watoto wanaweza pata chakula, wakule, tulipe nyumba, tuwalipe school fees.
Tamaa ya kila binadamu ni kuishi katika mazingira safi. Walakini, katika maeneo mengi kwenye vituo vya mijini, haswa hapa Nairobi, vilima vya taka hubaki vikiwa vimetapakaa bila kukusanywa kwa siku. Jambo na ambalo limezidi kusababisha hatari